Hi, I'm David Manti, and welcome to a new episode of the Today in Manufacturing podcast. With me this week are Jeff Franke and Anna Wells. We each have more than 15 years' experience covering the manufacturing industry. Every week, we take the 5 most popular stories on our websites and discuss the implications they have on the industry going forward. Before we get started, please make sure to like, share, and subscribe to the podcast. You could also help us out a lot by giving the podcast a positive review on whatever platform you use. If you want to email the podcast, you can reach any of us at Jeff, David, or Anna at IN.com with email the podcast in the subject line. You can also subscribe to us on YouTube at IN Magazine so you can join us every Thursday when we go live. Jeff, how are you doing this week?
I'm well, David. So, as is the case with a lot of us, as soon as they said we were going live, you had a little bit of a coughing thing. I feel like you may have one more. You need to get. Do you have one more little cough you just need to get out because you kind of cut it off pretty abruptly?
Oh no,
very well though. I mean,
no, I don't. It's like you have to force your body into it. It's like I know what's in there. You got 90 minutes. Just stay away. Stay away.
Wow.
Yeah. No. So
impressive.
It'll turn into some sort of weird bruise in my ankle later. Anna, how are you doing this week?
Fine, doing fine.
I mean, that's where coughs go when you suppress it. Or it's like, I mean, I guess the one is the, we just heard that story of the guy blew out his trachea because he held in a sneeze.
Held in a sneeze.
I mean, that has changed everything I know about sneezing. It's no longer I hold it in. You just go for it.
I think that when you hold in a cough, you develop lactose intolerance. That's my understanding.
Wow. Oh, that's why I can't drink milk anymore.
Far-reaching effects here.
Yeah, yeah. I see. I just thought it was the cagey bruises on my ankle.
When you go on a podcast, you can say whatever you want.
Yeah.
That's kind of the thing about podcasts is no research required.
Oh, and Brian W. is catching us for the first time live.
Yes.
Woohoo!
Hi.
Brian, thank you very much for joining us, man. We appreciate it. Anna, I feel like I should ask you how you're doing twice, only because I listened to last week's episode and I realized that I got so derailed by the 401k and the other discussion that I never went to ask how you were doing, and I just wanted to apologize.
Oh, no, that's okay. Last week I was doing fine also. So no problems.
It's good to catch up. It's good to catch up. All right. Well, before we jump into our first story, we have a word from our sponsor. To build a scalable maintenance function in today's market, organizations need to drive increased output from their equipment and their facilities with fewer resources. But there's one problem. Maintenance 1.0 needs to evolve. Join us Thursday, January 25th at 1 p.m. Eastern for Building Your 2024 Maintenance Program. Four key principles to boost uptime now and for the future. Learn which maintenance strategies you can leverage to boost uptime and why software, data, and technology are essential to the future of maintenance. All right, our first story this week. Oh, and a reminder, if you want to sponsor the podcast, let us know. It'd be cool. Our first story this week. UAW calls Stellantis heinous after Automaker dumps more than 500 temp workers. If you can believe it, Shawn Fain is mad as heck again. This week, the Detroit Free Press addressed some harsh words the UAW president issued this week directed at Stellantis. Stellantis kicked off 2024 with some layoffs, cutting 539 temporary workers. The company said the cuts were necessary to, quote, help improve efficiency, productivity, and market competitiveness at our facilities as we implement our Dare Forward 2030 strategic plan. Fain called Stellantis' actions heinous and shameful behavior before pledging to fight like hell to get people back to work. Actually, he said it more calmly. I'm going to fight like hell to get people back to work. These are the lowest tier jobs at Stellantis, and they're considered, quote, supplemental workers. So the workers don't get notice, the cuts are effective immediately, and the former employees won't receive supplemental unemployment benefits. Stellantis says this is the, quote, normal course of business. Fain says auto companies are playing divide and conquer by bringing the pain to the lowest paid workers and blaming the union. So, who's right here, Anna? Is it Fain in his theories about divide and conquer, or is just this the normal course of doing business?
Well, that phrase normal course of business, in this moment in time, I feel like it is hard to separate from the UAW talks this action when you consider that as part of that deal, the story goes that Stellantis had agreed to make several thousand, I think, of those temp workers permanent. Then there are reports now that some of those workers had paperwork sent to them to complete in order to apply to become permanent employees. And then that was basically ripped out from underneath some of these workers. They were basically, I read a report, they interviewed a worker who said she was absolutely floored, did not see this coming, being told that they'd be laid off, effective immediately.
Wait, so even these workers who were laid off, they had the paperwork to transition to full-time status?
So that was in the report I read. They interviewed a woman, and that was the case for her.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah. So not great. On the other hand, Stellantis also announced layoffs recently at a plant in Italy, something like 2,000 plus, reportedly temporary, that they cited as being due to weak demand. So that, I guess, speaks to the normal course of business line.
Yeah.
This also comes on the heels of December reports that Stellantis would be axing a shift at its Toledo plant, which would impact up to 1,200 workers, with potential layoffs as soon as February. And it's possible that we didn't hear about that because Stellantis says that shift elimination was part of its negotiation with the UAW, that it basically got the blessing for that from the UAW, which is maybe why you're not hearing Shawn Fain yelling about that.
Yeah.
But it does make you think, like, so maybe that was part of their discussion, but this was not. And so does the UAW feel like they've been had here and Stellantis is tacking on more stuff because they can? Unfortunately for the UAW, it doesn't sound like they can do much about that. And I think, too, we're in kind of a gray area, right? Because Stellantis wants to keep a handle on its costs in the event of a softer 24 market, which is being widely predicted for automotive. Yet we haven't yet seen that negative impact to automakers. So right now, UAW keeps pointing to Stellantis' record year of profits. That is true. I mean, they have been very profitable in the last 2 years. That is subject to change. I think Stellantis is trying to get in front of that. But the narrative is a little bit fuzzy because it's easy for the UAW to say, hey, look, they're making a ton of money over here. Why are they cutting jobs?
Yeah.
I don't know what happens next. I don't think that UAW has much leg to stand on. They're going to gripe, but.
Well, that's what I pulled from it. Like, I watched Fain's speech on the 16th, and he said, we're working hard to stop this. And that was what I thought. Like, what are you going to do?
What can you do
in the long run? And I mean, Doug, who's watching us live, great to see you, Doug. Always great to see you. He says at first, use them and lose them. But one of the things, because that's what I thought too when it comes to temporary workers, right? But at these auto plants, it's not just like how I would think of a traditional temp worker, right? That's coming in for a couple of weeks, filling a gap, and moving on from there. Like, these temporary workers have been there for quite some time, right?
Yeah, many of them have. And that's because that's become sort of the standard practice in automotive, is that these companies would bring in these temp workers, and then they would, they would not be subject to some of these pay rate increases and things like that. And then they would keep them on for very long periods of time. I think these workers have the expectation that they're going to move into those full-time roles, and then they don't.
Do we know if these temp workers are protected by the union?
Well, yes and no.
Yeah.
They are, but they're protected as a temporary worker.
Okay.
So it's not the same as if they're a full-time worker.
Okay.
And I mean, that goes back to the legacy, like you guys were just talking about here, of the way that title of temporary worker has really been manipulated by the automakers. I mean, they really have. There's no way around that because
you're not a 2-year temp.
Yeah, I mean, to hire somebody that way, but it's not for a project. It's not for short term. It is their way of manipulating the situation, which is why I can appreciate where Fain was coming from. He's got his playbook, right? It's worked. I was super critical of him at first, but it's worked in every instance. There seems to definitely be some jockeying between especially Stellantis and Shawn Fain here. It's very interesting because they got all those gains with the UAW contract in November. Then in December, we saw Stellantis opening up some jobs right around Christmas time there down in Illinois. And now sort of Stellantis is firing back here a little bit. So it does seem to be an interesting dynamic there specifically. The one thing I think you have to keep in mind is they did transition 3,000 of these workers. Now, if that number 3,000 includes this 500 that they eventually laid off, I mean, okay, I get it.
Yeah.
It's still 2,500 of those temporary workers that were transitioned to full-time and given probably a more than 33% raise because they were increased to a full-time worker and then given the additional pay raise that was negotiated in the contract. When you include benefits and everything else, from a business perspective, not a person perspective, because it's hard to separate those things sometimes. From a business perspective, this can't be a total shock. But Fane has to play it up that way. I get it. I don't blame him. I do the same thing. So it's interesting. I think the timing was also, I don't know, also very interesting in the fact of a story we're going to cover later with some of the things that are going on with the other automakers and pay increases that have been given out. So it does seem to be some interesting jockeying here. The frustrating thing is it's 529 lives that are also impacted in the process of doing this. And that's what you wish you could avoid here, as these two sort of really bigger, larger than life entities sort of jockey out for position.
No, 539. You missed
39.
10. But I mean, it's not like it's, it's all bad. It's bad. Doug was asking, do they have union dues taken from their paychecks? I don't know the answer to that one.
The temp workers?
Yeah.
I don't know. I know that some of them are officially represented by the union, and I don't know how they.
I believe they do. It's again, I think it's just all proportional.
Yeah. Okay. Based on that title.
Right.
So I guess, to Doug's point, that's maybe why he's fired up. He's losing that union due revenue, but also it's kind of a bad look, right? I mean, you would think there would be a little bit more of a grace period after everything kind of settled, understanding that there might be a little bit of fallout. But also, is Stellantis taking the brunt of this because they're maybe just the first to act? Like, Stellantis has been very outspoken about, like, not right-sizing, but working hard on the transition to EVs. Is this coming from, like, Ford and GM, and they just haven't pulled the trigger on some of these big moves that are necessary?
I think Stellantis is more vulnerable right now. I think they have been struggling. I think you're going to see 2023, when all the final sales numbers come out, was brutal.
Yeah.
I mean, Jeep is going to be down in sales. Jeep's never down in sales.
Yeah.
And they're going to feel a hit there. And then when they do have this aggressive initiative, and we talked about those facilities down in Belvedere, a big battery facility going in an electric truck facility going into that facility where they're doing neons and other things like that at one point, that's a lot of investment, and you're coming off a bad sales year. So I think there's a ton of pressure there. And anything they can do to sort of get again, I hate using this because there's jobs involved here, but like a corporate win, essentially.
Yeah.
That they can show that they're doing something in response financially to a bad year.
Right. Okay, that makes sense. Our next most popular story. Tesla drivers face lengthy charging delays in Chicago amid sub-zero temperatures. Sub-freezing temps in Chicago are causing extremely long lines for Teslas in the Windy City's supercharging stations. One driver said he waited more than 5 hours to charge his car. Some people at this point now have been there overnight, 24-hour periods. Apparently, part of the problem is that the usual 45-minute charge is taking about 2 hours, if they charge at all. Tow trucks have even been called to move the vehicles that are drained and can't move. According to the National Center for Biotechnology information, lithium-ion batteries lose capacity and cycle life when the temperature drops below freezing. As we know, it has been not just cold, but really cold for a while now. It was a balmy 16 yesterday, and it legitimately felt nice outside. Yeah. When a blue snowflake icon appears on a Tesla touchscreen, the battery is too cold for full power and range. The automaker also recommends leaving the car plugged in when possible and keeping the charge level above 20% when not plugged in. Anna, the video from some of these supercharger stations was crazy, but I just kept coming back to some of this is kind of operator error, right? You have to know what the conditions are and how you need to, I guess, keep your Tesla for peak performance. I don't know. It was just when they were interviewing some of these people at the stations, and they're just like, I don't know, I plugged it in, it's not charging. And it's just like, I mean, I get it. It's maybe Tesla needs to work on the education side a little bit, but maybe got to be on the car owners to know what they have to do to power their cars.
Yeah, I think it was a little bit of a mixed bag, like 5-hour lines. We know that there's an infrastructure catch up that needs to happen. I believe there's a lot of effort being put forth there by both federal, state, and private entities to make improvements. And also, let's remember that there have been plenty of points in history where there have been long lines at gas stations when extreme seasonal or economic conditions have taken place. That, this is sort of an extreme case, I would say.
It was kind of reminiscent of like when you would see the long lines and then the gas stations running out of gas. Mm-hmm. It was, anyways.
No one is blaming the automaker at that time.
Right.
But anyway, obviously these reports of vehicles being drained and essentially bricked is not a good look for Tesla. And I'm curious why the reports are pertaining to this specific make, and you're not hearing that from other EV owners as well. But this is a very Tesla-focused story, especially when you consider that basically any EV owner can now use those Tesla charging stations. And maybe that's one part of the problem, that the charges are obviously taking too long, of course, which is creating the line. But the lines are probably also longer because everyone is now congregating around these Tesla charging stations. Like, this was a problem of Tesla's making, unfortunately. And if so, I think that's just an unfortunate blowback of that situation. And one we've discussed on this panel before.
Right? Like, we want everyone to use our charger. Yeah. Now that everyone can use it, what do we do now?
Yes. Well, and it seems like another way that Tesla's trying to achieve dominance by kind of hanging its existing customers out to dry because, creating more charging competition is one, but also we saw this with the price cuts, that they've cut their prices so low that they basically killed the resale value on their vehicles. And many Tesla owners who paid top dollar for these vehicles 1 or 2 years ago are like underwater. So, how much of this can they do before people start to flee Tesla, especially amid more EV options as they're coming out? So, that's one thing. I think obviously the cold weather is a problem. My understanding is that generally EV batteries take the biggest range hit in the cold when also trying to heat the cabin, which is why some are now being equipped with heat pumps to help offset that. And Tesla actually, their heat pump technology is considered to be like pretty much top of the line. And it's come standard now on all of its vehicles, but it didn't always. So that means anybody that has a Tesla that was produced before, say, like 2021 model year, they might have a battery disadvantage in these temperatures compared to newer Tesla models.
Okay.
Because, those newer vehicles have been designed to kind of offset that challenge. And that anyone who's sitting there in that line, they have their heat probably cranked up full blast, right? Because it's freezing. I mean, I get that, but I don't know. It just, as far as cold weather tech development, I think, the automakers are working on it. I don't think that it's well understood by the market at this point. So to me, stories like this risk people taking the conclusion away that EVs cannot function in the cold or that they're even a liability. And of course, everyone should have access to all of that information. But I also think like 1 million people crowding the same chargers and sitting there in line with their heat full blast. And like, to your point, not, there are safeguards in the system built to like help you. A lot of EVs are built that way where you're supposed to program in the charging station so they warm up the battery. So when you get there, it charges really effectively and quickly.
Yeah.
So you got to read the instruction manual.
Yeah. Well, and it's, I think this is more public because it is Tesla and a Tesla charging station. Whereas you're always, ever since the first car came off the line, you had this sort of like just base like novice driver, right? That doesn't know anything about cars. And like if anything happens, they're just kind of stranded on the roadside, right? But I mean, this is kind of news because it's EVs in the winter. Jeff, Anna said that, when we ran out of gas, you didn't see automakers taking heat, right? But, all of a sudden we have a problem with charging. And they start, like Fox 32 in Chicago started the broadcast with one driver saying, I want Elon Musk to do something about this.
Elon's got enough on his plate right now.
I'm sure he's going to hit this head on.
Yeah.
Just check his Twitter. He's got 9 solutions already.
Yeah. And one of them involves a robot.
Yeah.
So I think this is like it's kind of a big picture, short term, big picture, small picture, long term, short term type of thing. In the short term, people need to know their vehicles. I agree with you 100%. This is every vehicle operates less efficiently when it's cold out. Yeah. It doesn't matter if it's gas or electric. Now with electric, it does hit harder. It does. The battery degrades more. There's just no way around it, but you have to know that going in. So, and when I go back to, the OEs, they did take some heat. when there was that gas shortages and stuff, they put a lot of pressure on the OEs to improve fuel efficiency. Okay.
Yeah,
that was the long-term impact.
Yeah.
Same thing here. We're going to get better. This is a growing pain. Yeah. This is something that right now just sucks. And it kind of is what it is. I think what you're going to see is more organic knowledge being passed down about electric vehicles. Just like when, we had this latest run of bad weather and my daughters parked their vehicles outside. Put some heat in the tank. Make sure the gas tank is full. Check your air pressure in your tires. All that thing, because I know that from driving these vehicles for 30 years.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
We don't have that right now. Just like what we face in machine shops and on plant floors all over the place when it comes to that machine whisperer or that organic maintenance information. Same deal here.
Yeah.
So we'll get better. But the other thing I think that you're going to see that this will help fuel or helps push is more EV focused infrastructure. What we need is in these urban areas where that's where we want more EVs being used, especially parking garages need to have a place to plug in your EVs.
Yeah.
Okay. The fact that essentially all of the automakers have come together under one standard format for the plugs is going to help. Okay. Because it's not going to be just Tesla anymore. It's GM and Ford and Toyota and everybody else.
Yeah.
So again, it's coming. It'll get there. Feel bad for these folks that may have even in some cases, they maybe had to drive 20 minutes or 20 miles in order to get their battery charged, which sucks. But we will get there. The infrastructure is coming. This will help push that forward.
Yeah.
So it's, like I said, it's a growing pain.
So, okay, those are the people I feel for. The people that were heading to the charging station with enough charge, had their battery preheated, everything ready, and then they kind of saw a log jam there, right? Like, so I feel for those people because their cars essentially died while they were waiting for people that were unprepared. But the other thing is, like, I just think of the tech that is in the car. Just so you have so much information at your fingertips. Like, it's not hard to know. Like, even though one of our cars is a hybrid, I mean, when I have the kid in the back and it's negative 12 degrees, but I don't have a jacket on him because of the seatbelt, and I have it blasting at like 80 degrees just to try and get any heat on there, I can watch my miles per gallon like shrink to the low 20s. And I know that, like, I just have to drive differently and plan, And
we have the infrastructure. The gas stations are plenty, so it's not as big of a concern. But again, you have that organic understanding of what's going on.
Yeah.
The other thing I think that's interesting when we look at some of these other alternatives to electric vehicles that are being pushed, whether it's a hybrid. I think that was a comment on the site, actually. Somebody said this reinforces how that might be a better option in cities sometimes, in your cold weather cities. That's debatable. But the other thing is, we keep hearing more and more about hydrogen. It doesn't have the same type of degradation issue when looking at cold weather or hot weather.
Yeah.
So it's interesting.
Doug's got a couple of hot Elon Musk goal conspiracy theories. Elon's goals: number 1, land on the moon. Number 2, colonize Mars. Number 3, control the weather. Thus, no more frozen Teslas. But how is he going to do that, Doug? Is it going to be, the cloud seeding? Because I heard they really tried that in China and it didn't work out. But I don't know. He's clearly got a lot of time on his hands and he's got a lot of ideas.
Actually, that cloud seeding, that's an interesting story if you look at the GE side of that.
Yeah.
Because one of the engineers that was actually in charge of that, I'm sorry, we're getting off topic here.
It's cloud.
Steven Spielberg's father.
Oh, very cool.
Yeah, was actually one of the engineers that was in charge of researching that.
Man, they didn't cover that in the Fablemans. So I was very fascinated by this broadcast in particular because one person called got a little colorful with the language, calling the supercharging station a graveyard. There was one soundbite that was pretty good where it was just one guy saying, got a lot of dead robots out here. And I like how even at the end of our stories or broadcasts, you always reach out and they're like, you know what? We reached out to Tesla and they didn't respond. Isn't that shocking? Again, it's a learning curve. Once again, reiterating the importance for drivers to hit a preconditioning button to raise a car's battery prior to charging, and just simple cold weather stuff like, hey, make sure you have, not necessarily a change of clothes, but like warm blankets, things to keep you warm if you ever do get stranded when you're on the road. Or your kids decide to scream until they're warm again, and you just keep throwing fleece blankets at them like, please, which I don't know anything about. Our next most popular story: Tesla raises factory wages, UAW takes credit. Did Tesla bow to auto industry pressure after the UAW's win over the big three? Well, it certainly looks like it. Plant workers at Toyota, Volkswagen, and Hyundai, recently saw a pay bump to match those won by the UAW from Stellantis, Ford, and GM. And it looks like Tesla is following suit. Internal communication at Tesla Fremont has indicated that plant workers in California and at other gigafactories should soon receive a, quote, market adjustment pay increase. The raises will impact production associates, material handlers, and quality inspectors, among others. And the workers weren't the only ones happy with the news, as UAW President Shawn Fain kind of took credit for the wage increase, saying the hikes followed in the footsteps of nearly every other automaker, quote, in the wake of our historic victory. According to Bloomberg, Tesla has held a labor cost advantage over its competitors of up to $1.7 billion. That works out to about $2,700 per vehicle. Now, the big question, will these wage increases be enough to stop organization efforts at Tesla? Jeff, unionizing Tesla would be a crown jewel for the UAW.
Be like a head on the mantle. I mean, that'd be incredible for the UAW, for Shawn Fain. I think it's interesting. I think they looked at these increases probably coming in around 10%, which not on the high side for what the UAW worker, or it's not UAW, the others, the Toyotas and everybody else, what they did, I think they were 9 to 14%, somewhere in there. So kind of on the lower side of the middle, I guess, for what they're going for. What this felt like is Tesla definitely responded. I don't think you can discount the UAW influence here. I think that definitely played a part. It almost felt a little, I don't know, patronizing due to the timing. Yeah. Like they waited a couple of weeks here after the others had those increases go into effect. So it'll be interesting to see how this one plays out. I mean, Tesla is going to be a white whale for the UAW. I just feel like there's so much animosity there. One tip to Shawn Fain, this guy, Elon Musk, he's got an ego. Maybe play on that. Maybe ease off on the confrontational nature of how you've gone after these other folks and just tell them, hey, let me take something off your plate. You don't need to be worrying about negotiating with workers and dealing with all that stuff. Let me handle this for you, big guy. You got all this other stuff going on. You're too important to mess with these things. Just let the union deal with it.
You think that works?
Oh, better than saying you don't know what you're doing and you're victimizing workers.
Right.
But it doesn't have to work because he doesn't really need Elon Musk's permission. He needs the permission of the workers. They need to vote on that. So
if Elon Musk isn't ready, do you think anything would really stop him from moving to Mexico?
No.
Okay. That would be my point, I guess.
I think that Shawn Fain's time would be better served at every other automaker first.
Agreed.
And then, once the white whale is the last one standing, addressing it.
The white whale.
In full force.
The cyber whale.
Oh, don't float that out there. It's already been trademarked.
The model whale.
Anna.
Yes.
Is this something that UAW should take credit for? Or is it just a very coincidental bump in wages that matches, what everyone else did as a result of UAW's win?
Yeah. I think that's pretty clear. Elon Musk recently said if the UAW were to be successful in organizing Fremont, that Tesla would have viewed it as the company having failed in some way, which means that he believes, I think, that the company can properly manage recruitment and retention with market competitive wages. And so I actually do think that the UAW can take credit for this raise because what they did with the Detroit 3 obviously initiated this domino effect. That's very clear. To me, the interesting part too, and you guys, I think, agree, is that, okay, so what happens now? Like how effective will efforts be to organize Fremont? Because the one challenge I think now is so the UAW can't attach such a fat increase in pay to their sales pitch because some of it's already there. The UAW doesn't see this as a deterrent. They're not saying why bother, as evidenced by Fain's pledge already that he will be visiting VW Chattanooga this weekend. He's still on top of everybody else, not to mention the fact that analysts say that this union needs to continue to advance its mission on a national level because some see the biggest threat to it as its density in the Midwest and within the big three, and that they need to get more EV companies on board in order to sustain themselves. Another thing that's important to add, I think, is that scientific studies have shown that wage increases provide like a job satisfaction boost initially, but it doesn't last very long. So if Tesla is doing this to remain competitive, they're not going to maintain goodwill just based on this pay raise for very long. So it's not necessarily any kind of silver bullet that's going to stop the union talks in their tracks. People will still probably be open to these discussions, and you know that Sean Fain is not going to back down and trying to approach Fremont and see if he can build a consensus there. So by no means does this change that trajectory, in my opinion. I mean, that's happening either way. And like you said, it's a crown jewel. If he can unionize Tesla, then he is going to view himself as being completely unstoppable. I do think there's a lot of challenges there in terms of that culture and how it's been established to date as being, I mean, we all know like a workforce can build its own momentum in one way or the other as it pertains to union organizing.
Right.
And it does seem like not just what Elon Musk does, but there must be some internal, I don't know, that because the past, I think, studies that they've done had not shown like overwhelming support for that. So I don't know.
No, I think it is definitely a shared philosophy with a number of workers that work at Tesla. One thing that you had mentioned is how quickly that the shine kind of rubs off when you do get a wage increase. Is there less goodwill with a wage increase when you know you're essentially the last ones in the auto industry to get it? You know, like, I mean, you see UAW wins it, everybody else does it, and then, you know, your company finally does it. Or is it like you're just happy that you got the wage increase in general? Or do you think some of the shine is off because like it took all of that just for you to, you know, get a little bit of a bump to stay competitive? I
don't think I would view it that way. If it were me, I would just be cool, I got a raise.
Yeah, I don't think it's the timing. I think the amount is. I mean, when you look at 33 versus 10, I mean, with all these figures being made public, that is definitely going to take some of the shine off that.
Yeah, I did not see that the figures had been made public, but I do know that when they in November gave some Utah, I think, what is it, their Gigafactory in Nevada, workers a raise, it was like 20 to 22, or, 30 to 33 or something. It was not a lot. Well, it was 10%.
Yeah.
And another thing that Tesla really relies on is the cool factor, right? Like people want to work for Tesla because that is the cool place to work. Has that started to rub off at all? Or is that going to kind of be long-standing just because of their position in the market and, let's face it, their leadership?
I think that's rubbing off in a lot of areas, not just those working there. And I guess I can't answer that. You'd have to ask them. But by the number of complaints that are coming out, I think some of that is rubbing off. I think it's definitely not as big a factor for the consumer. I think some of that, now that there's more competition out there, they're not just drawn immediately to Tesla when it comes to electric vehicles or the I don't know, the mirage, the imagery of driving a Tesla is kind of faded.
Oh, gotcha.
I think what's also interesting here, we keep talking about Tesla and UAW and that being the crown jewel. The one that's going to have the bigger impact is if they can flip that Chattanooga facility or like that Spartanburg, South Carolina facility, that BMW facility down there, because there's so much other automotive infrastructure built around those plants. That could be a real trickle down effect there. So the fact that they're at 2,000 people on that petition right now out of 5,500 that work there, that's a big step. I mean, if that plant would somehow transition to UAW or they'd get one of those big Toyota facilities out in California, that's going to have a bigger effect for UAW, even though it's not going to get the same headlines maybe as Tesla.
Well, all of this surrounds the UAW bump, right? Like what everybody talks about, everyone's sort of following in the UAW's footsteps. Some of the things that Fain said on the 16th that stood out to me is that just here, a reminder that, the UAW bump is great, but without a union contract in place, the companies can kind of make changes at will in the future. Yeah. So that's something to always think about as well. He said specifically, when they give a raise in the UAW contract, they can't just come in and take it away. And I think that is a good reminder for some of the people that are experiencing a little bit of a benefit from the UAW bump that could go away a lot faster than the bump the UAW received.
Yeah. I mean, it leads into a deeper conversation of the give and take of a union membership.
Yeah. Let's dive into it right now. 5-hour podcast. Also, now, I wanted to add this in there too, because there is also another little tidbit of Tesla news. We found out that there might be like another oddball entry into Tesla's kind of, let's say, cash grab history. So Electric recently found a trademark application from Tesla for a, quote, cyber hammer, likely a piece of fitness equipment that is a hammer shaped like a Cybertruck on a stick. That is fascinating. It's possible that these cyber hammers could soon show up in Tesla's store. Now, so Cybertruck fans can celebrate their Cybertruck by smashing it into the ground, Anna? Is that it? Like, I love Cybertruck so much, I can also take my Cybertruck hammer to my Anytime Fitness as I work on my core.
Yeah. I don't know. I actually find these little side product things to be sort of funny.
Okay.
And everyone's always telling manufacturers to diversify. So why not?
No,
it's a weird item, but like if he can sell 1 million of, like, he sold that blowtorch and burnt hair cologne and all that weird stuff that is like very gimmicky and meme specific and people viral and do it. I don't know.
No, I do find these viral campaigns fascinating as well. Some of the other odd Tesla items that we've seen in the past, Tesla tequila, if you guys remember that one, in the lightning bolt shaped bottle. Those are fetching quite a price online right now. There was a Tesla surfboard that was apparently inspired by the car's interior. Tesla short shorts, which is what they're calling booty shorts, that said sexy with the S3 XY on the back. There was also the Tesla cyber whistle. And Anna, as you mentioned, the not a flamethrower, official name, not a flamethrower, but that was sold by Musk's Boring Company.
That one was sort of irresponsible, I will say that.
Well, I mean, he responsibly named it not a flamethrower. So that way people knew the device that threw flames wasn't a flamethrower. Jeff, your thoughts on the cyber hammer and whether or not you would wield one for physical fitness?
My days of pounding on tires with sledgehammers is definitely in the past.
I think the benefit of a cyber hammer is that you don't need the tire, though, because it's like rubberized. So you can, you don't need to land that tractor tire.
Yeah, I'm not tracking on this one. I don't know. I mean, some of the other ones, they got some headlines kind of cool, but like this one seems like a definite reach. I don't know. It seems weird. I understand, the connection, because that's what they're using the sledgehammer to be on the side of the truck when they're first showing the durability and everything of it, I guess. But yeah, I don't like this one. They can do better. Yeah.
Anna, one of the first things that you kind of when I first met you is you like to do the would you rathers, right? Or the situational.
Yeah.
And the one that you posed a long time ago was, in the event of the zombie apocalypse, who would be your wingman, what song would be playing, and what would be your weapon of choice. And I just might change it to the cyber hammer. I'm definitely, it's always the fireman's axe or an axe, but I could see a cyber hammer also just being cool. Because you got, with the axe, Jeff, you have like problems with the, axe getting stuck. Cyber hammer, bludgeon and bounce.
Fair. I can't argue that.
Yeah, true.
I mean, that could be, talk about a thing that if people want to drop it in the comments section or email us for a koozie or a shirt, let us know in the event of the zombie apocalypse, wingman, weapon of choice, and what's the song playing?
The song? Yeah. Hey, you guys need to talk to my kids about would you rather too, because they think that you can say neither or both in response to would you rather, and I'm like, that is not how you do it.
No, you pick one.
You can't say both.
Yeah.
You can't say neither. That's not the point.
They may not want to play that game with you.
I don't think so.
Response.
Yeah.
Well, and for the record, my song of choice is Bill Withers' Use Me, because what a great song to kill some zombies to. And my wingman would be my brother. Jeff, the one thing I remember of yours is you said lightsaber.
Oh, yeah. The perfect weapon for killing zombies.
Well, and then I had such a problem with it because I'm just like, lightsabers aren't real, Jeff. And you're just like,
Neither are
nor
zombies.
And I was just like, it was such a sticking point for me because I'm like, no, I feel like we're so much closer to a zombie apocalypse than a lightsaber.
Well, I remember my soundtrack was Live or Let Die.
Okay.
Guns N' Roses version. And I wanted Jesse Ventura from Predator as my sidekick.
I mean, yeah. Anna, do you remember yours by any chance?
No, I don't even remember this.
Really?
Yeah.
I could tell you like the table at the bar we were sitting.
Wow. Okay.
It was quite the afternoon.
Real intellectual roundtable there.
Yeah.
This was after we got done with all of our, discussions over the books we were reading and the documentaries we had recently watched, it evolved. Brian W. says, the Cyber Hammer sounds like a Fortnite promo.
Fair.
Yeah, agreed. All right, our next most popular story. Lockheed Martin's Skunk Works rolls out sonic boom busting X-59. It's been a good couple of weeks to be a fan of X-planes. Boeing had a couple of exciting developments that were kind of overshadowed by the MAX blowout. And last Friday, Lockheed Martin's Skunk Works rolled out the X-59, the experimental aircraft designed to solve a long-standing challenge of supersonic flight, the sonic boom. The X-59 plans to bust the boom and turn it into more of a, quote, gentle thump. Working alongside NASA for more than 10 years, Skunk Works is leading the design, build, and flight test on the X-59 project. The plane is 99.7 feet long with a wingspan of 29.5 feet and designed to fly Mach 1.4 or 925 miles per hour at some 55,000 feet. The plane's design should separate shock waves that produce these sonic booms. Next, the aircraft is going to complete a series of ground tests before its first flight, scheduled for later this year. When the aircraft is validated in initial flight tests, it will move into the acoustic testing phase, which will include flights over 4 to 6 U.S. communities. Residents are actually going to be asked to share their responses to this new sonic thump. Anna, if approved, the tech could cut commercial flight times in half. And I know that we've talked about supersonic flight quite a bit and like whether or not it's commercially viable. But one thing that I liked about this project is that they come out and say like, hey, well, apparently a lot of people thought that they'd be flying in this one. They're like, no. This is the test bed. Yeah. We prove everything out. And if it works, manufacturers can kind of pick and choose the technology as they would like to use it as they pursue planes that could potentially, cut flight times in half.
Yeah. Well, first of all, I love that the thump is being described as similar to closing a car door. Because if that's an accurate characterization, then what they've done here to engineer that problem out of this technology is remarkable.
Oh, yeah. Just incredible.
Yeah, it is. So that's exciting to me. They say it's the X-59's sleek, elongated structure with a particularly long nose that addresses the sonic boom because it's designed to spread out the shockwaves made when the craft collides with atmospheric molecules. The aviation experts out there are really giving a lot of credit here also to NASA's involvement in the project. Mm-hmm. And with that, you have some interesting safeguards in place, including NASA's external vision system, which apparently addresses visibility due to the fact that the cockpit is like halfway down. Mm-hmm. And so it's hard to see out of that. But XVS, NASA system, provides a high-def display. So there's a 4K monitor in there that serves as like a window that allows the pilot to safely see traffic in their flight path. So that's also like a very cool feature of this. I think the other good news in terms of NASA's involvement here is, so you were mentioning the timeline, and I do think there is some misconceptions as to the actual timeline. The rigorous testing that will take place, which so Skunk Works is supposed to hand this over to NASA like in the next year, I think. Mm-hmm. But NASA doesn't actually plan to fly it out for real tests, like the acoustic tests, until like 2026 or 2027.
Oh, disappointing.
Is it? I mean, to me, that's like due diligence.
Due diligence can still be disappointing because it's so far away.
Boring. Due diligence. I think it's reassuring to see the scope of this and what appears to be like a regimented testing procedure involving one of the most, I would say, trusted government entities.
And like the right way of doing a private-public partnership.
For sure. And then, and it honestly, too, it's like such a strange time for this to hit the news cycle when you consider that right now people are questioning whether we even have a handle on like the most basic of commercial air travel. When you look at like what's going on with Boeing, do we need a dramatic new set of safeguards and parameters pertaining to process and quality checks like that? It's a scary time when you look at aviation. So when I saw the timeline and NASA's very, I think, like plotting, dedicated approach to this, I was glad to see them there. It was like a security blanket for me. I will never get on one, but you know that.
Yeah. Thank you, NASA. Still a no for me.
It's for somebody else, but I do. Yeah, I do. I'm impressed by it.
Well, I mean, talking about the timeline, and I didn't notice that. So there will be no acoustic tests this year because So here's what's. So Lockheed's doing some acoustic tests.
They're doing some tests, but they're not flying it out over these communities for a couple more years. They're going to test it around, I think some like some specific test areas, like an Air Force base and stuff. It's a very limited radius. Mm-hmm. They're not going to be like sending it out over these half a dozen selected communities and asking for feedback for another several years.
I mean, they just want to know.
You just want to hear the car door.
I want to hear the gentle thump, the gentle thump,
the heartbeat.
Doug says someone is going to be so itching to take it out. See, and they'll never know.
If it's a car door, Doug, yeah. I mean, maybe no one will ever know. It would be bad if it was not perfected and then you heard a sonic boom. But
I'm pretty sure we're just writing Top Gun 3. Well, in talking about kind of jumping the gun a little bit, Jeff, one thing that stood out to me is that people see developments like this and they're just like, oh yeah, how many people can ride on it? You know, how much is it going to cost for a plane ticket? And it's like, everybody calm down. We're proving the technology and there's going to be economies of scale in the event that it is proven at all. And so I don't understand why so many people get fired up where it's just, they can't just look at something and be like, oh man, that could be an incredible development. I hope it works out.
Because like the last super fast plane didn't work because it was too expensive. So I think it's a fair question.
Jumping the gun.
Well, no.
Because they're doing it right this time.
Looking backwards and learning from our history so it doesn't repeat itself.
No, head down. Head down.
This is the Amazonification of our society.
Yeah.
I want it now.
Yeah.
You just told me about it. I want it now.
Now.
I like it. I want it.
Not in a couple of years. Yeah. Jeff, what are you thinking about the X-59 here and the gentle thump?
Well, very cool. Okay. Don't want to sidestep these developments. This is fantastic. I think it's really interesting, though, on a couple of fronts that NASA comes out and is very heavily involved with this X-59 with Boeing and Skunk Works. They're also heavily involved with another firm backed by Northrop Grumman called Boom. I mean, we've talked about this firm on here. Boom actually has orders from a couple of airlines, Japan Airlines, American, United, I believe, have all already pre-ordered some of these commercial jetliners that can also hit these supersonic speeds, which is, correct me if I'm wrong, this is like twice as fast as a commercial airliner right now. Is that about right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So, I mean, all of these developments are wonderful because I share your excitement for being on a plane less time.
Yeah.
Like sooner I can get on and off that thing, I'm very happy.
Yeah.
So I think that's really interesting. It's also seeing NASA again sort of hedge their bets a little bit here, going with both of them, see who can get there sooner. Boom is reportedly going to be doing some test flights this year. So they may be a little bit further ahead. And when you look at their prototypes, they look like jetliners. Mm-hmm. The X-59 looks kind of more like a fighter plane right now.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So it'll be interesting to see kind of where this plays out, who gets ahead of it. But NASA will be in good shape either way because they're heavily involved in both. I think for Boeing, this is also interesting. We talked about this, I believe it was last week. Half of their operating revenue, half of their profits, or half of their revenues come from the Department of Defense, come from government contracts, I should say. So even though things are struggling, maybe on the domestic side, they do have a lot of these, and I know this is domestic as well, because we're talking about passenger travel, but they're working with NASA, so it's kind of intertwined there, sort of helping to preserve that other big part of their business too, while they're struggling in the headlines with the stuff that's going on with safety with their 737s.
And you're right about Boom. When you look at the Overture, it looks like you could see the transition to commercial aircraft. Yeah. Makes a lot more sense. So according to John Clark, Skunk Works Vice President and General Manager, this aircraft could have lasting transformational impacts for people around the world. And one thing that I reiterated in the story is that it's great to just see anything come out of Skunk Works. because like 85% of their work is on classified projects. And you're kind of just always like, I don't know, what's going on in there? You know? And I just wanted to credit an old friend, Mike Rainoni, because he was the first one, once I started, building a relationship with him, and he was a contributor we've had many conversations, and he would always talk about Skunk Works. And he was the one that kind of put it on my radar, just because I was like, oh man, like, you're one of the best people I know when it comes to product development. And he's always talking about Skunk Works, and just really told me a lot about it. And so I've been fascinated ever since for the last 15 years. Plus, really cool name, intense work, adorable little skunk as the mascot. All right, our most popular story this week. Hertz to sell 20,000 EVs using proceeds to buy ICE vehicles. In a recent SEC filing, Hertz said it is selling 20,000 electric vehicles from its U.S. fleet. That's about 1/3 of the car rental company's global EV fleet. A portion of the capital raised will be used to buy internal combustion engine vehicles. Hertz, whoa, what happened there? Hertz started offloading multiple makes and models in December, and it's going to continue through 2024. The decision is going to cost about $245 million in expenses. In an October earnings call, Hertz chairman and CEO Stephen Scherr said collision and damage repairs on EVs can cost about twice as much as a comparable combustion engine vehicle. Part of the problem is the dramatic drop in EV prices from 2022 to 2023. This is all spearheaded by Tesla. Hertz is taking a larger financial loss when these rentals are totaled out. Anna, Hertz says it's still going to offer a variety of EVs, just not as many. And I think when we talked a lot about these market dynamics, like how they're not repairable, how they get totaled out faster, I got to say, like, one of the parts of the automotive industry that I didn't think about right away was the impact it's going to have on these rental fleets. And it's apparently enough to make Hertz kind of really get out of EVs for the time being.
Yeah, there's a lot happening here. For one, basically Hertz overshot it on EVs, and now they need to thin out their fleet a little bit to better match demand. Looking backwards, you do wonder a bit what the plan was exactly. Mm-hmm. Since electrics, I don't know, they definitely hold a lot of appeal for certain users and very little appeal for other users. Mm-hmm. I think studies have shown that familiarity with electrics, so either owning, driving, or riding in one before, makes you more interested in the technology. But if you don't have familiarity, then your interest in the technology can be very minimal. So if you're a Hertz customer, and that's the case for you, and you're on a leisure trip or a business trip, and you're in a city that you are unfamiliar with, charging infrastructure is maybe unclear to you, I think that is a massive impediment for people to say, let's roll the dice on this EV. I've never been in one. I've never driven one. We'll figure it out along the way. I don't think people are doing that.
Yeah.
I think people are taking the path of least resistance and saying, not today. Unfortunately for the industry, this misstep is going to have a massive ripple effect, because analysts are saying that this flood of EVs to hit the resale market from Hertz, and they're generally at lower prices than EVs are selling for right now, are going to be enough to actually drive down the price of all pre-owned EVs. Oh, wow. Jeez. And it will and it will in turn likely reduce the price that buyers will pay for new, because that's how that works, So it feels a bit unfair, because some experts also say that the high repair cost of EVs, that's a short-term challenge, that comes with any new technology, and that's something that's going to ease as more vehicles hit the road. I think that makes sense. And you also have to mention too that, like, if you buy an EV from a dealership to own, many of those batteries and those vehicles have like 7-9 year warranties on them. Mm-hmm. So you're not in the same spot if you buy an EV, but I do think this is reflecting poorly on the technology itself. Lynn McChristian, director of the Office of Risk Management and Insurance Research at the University of Illinois, told Autoblog.
We got also it. A great site.
Yeah, one of my favorites. Lynn said the infrastructure has to catch up with the transition, and that will bring the prices down on these repairs. So unfortunately, with this new tech, people didn't use it correctly. They beat up on these cars. But it's kind of hard for me to believe that Hertz couldn't have foreseen any of this. To me, it feels like a misstep by Hertz that is like really having a significant impact on driving this industry down, not just from a pricing standpoint, but also from just a perception standpoint that Hertz is like backing away from what they had committed to. So all told, like just a really kind of disappointing story.
Well, isn't a big part of it, you mentioned it earlier with your analysis on EV ownership, is that when the cost came down, a lot of people wound up underwater. And now, Hertz is underwater on like 60,000 EVs. It's incredible. I mean, and you're right. Maybe they did get out over their skis a little bit just because, according to the filing, Hertz is going to implement a series of initiatives to try and improve EV fleet profitability, like expanding charging infrastructure and what I thought was most important, growing relationships with EV manufacturers, particularly related to giving affordable access to parts and labor. And that was one of those where it was like, wait, why did you think about doing that now?
Mm-hmm.
Like maybe before the bulk buy.
Mm-hmm.
Jeff, were you kind of shocked? Are you more shocked that Hertz is unloading a third or 20,000 EVs, or were you more shocked that they got in that big to begin with?
So, just to offer perspective, they're cutting a third of their fleet.
Yeah.
Okay,
right.
That's significant, but I wouldn't say they're abandoning the category or whatever you want to say. They want to get smarter with it.
Yeah.
That is a big chunk to get rid of based on a relatively short usage pattern, I would say. So it's a bold move. I think what this would have resonated better if they went and said, yeah, no, we're going to stick that money into internal combustion engine vehicles.
Yeah.
Maybe manage that message a little
bad
bit
look,
better.
yeah.
But the math is pretty straightforward. And you're right. They had to anticipate some of this. If I had to guess, I think the bigger thing is not people not wanting to rent these vehicles initially, but maybe trying it once and being excited and then experiencing some of that range anxiety that we hear about and just going, I am never doing this again. I drove myself nuts, like Anna alluded to, trying to find a place to charge this thing.
Yeah.
What do I do? It would also be interesting to know which vehicles they're getting rid of. I'd like to know more about that.
20,000 Leafs.
Yeah, I mean, it could be. And I think it would also be interesting to see because with some of these vehicles, there were still tax benefits associated with them. Not all of them had kind of grandfathered out of that. So I'm sure all of that was taken into account when these vehicles were purchased. Maybe that's also coming into play here in terms of determining which ones they're getting rid of. Or maybe there's some that just have a bad reputation and they don't want to deal with that. So it'll be, like I said, I would have liked to know more about the vehicles that were getting out there. I think this is, again, a bit of a growing pain, people figuring this stuff out a little bit more. Once we get, I really feel like the solution to a lot of these dynamics is that charger infrastructure. Yeah. And I think that's going to improve dramatically, even over the next, I wouldn't even put it in years, I'd put it in months, because we've got all the big OEs saying we're all going to use the same type of plug-in. It's all going to be universal. So it shouldn't be that big of a deal finding a charger specific to your vehicle make. Yeah. We should be just a charger in general.
Well, and I understand that anxiety because, I mean, when you're traveling, it's already enough. You don't need a couple more flyers out there. So maybe this is something that wasn't necessarily for a Hertz to take on, but something more like a booking agent or somewhere where it could be like, hey, you're looking to rent a car and the hotel you're staying at has the infrastructure to have an EV. So would you like to not necessarily upgrade, but we'll put you in an EV, for whatever like deal you could offer, just to maybe take some of that out. Cause you're right. Like if you're booking a rental car, I mean, I think like it's, to me, it would be like how you go for a Yukon and they're like, all we got is the Cobalt,
But I'd ask you guys this. To me, if I'm looking at two vehicles, they're the same price or very similar, wouldn't you go towards the gas as opposed to the EV too?
I mean, yeah, unless
there's no there's no additional benefit there in terms of price.
I mean, for me, yeah, for all the reasons I just said, that like I don't need one more variable when I'm traveling, especially because sometimes when we travel for business in particular, like our timelines are so tight that it's like you're landing, you're going to a meeting, you're going to a show, and I don't know, I just so for me, I would still go old school with gas.
Because that's what I was surprised at when I looked just at some local Hertz places. The EVs were almost the exact same price. Yeah. I thought they would have been a little bit less expensive, but they weren't. So.
I don't know. Is that maybe something that the automakers could subsidize? I don't know. Because, I mean, you would think that a rental agency would be a good place to kind of get more people comfortable with EVs. But, I mean, in this case, it kind of did the opposite.
Yeah.
All right. Well, Before we jump into, in case you missed it, the stories that maybe weren't as popular, but still stand to make a big impact on the industry going forward, we have another word from our sponsor. If you want to be one, reach out to us. Let us know. Help you out. Hook you up. To build a scalable maintenance function in today's market, organizations need to drive increased output from their equipment and their facilities with fewer resources. But there's one problem. Maintenance 1.0 needs to evolve. So join us Thursday, January 25th. That's actually coming up at 1 p.m. Eastern for Building Your 2024 Maintenance Program. 4 key principles to boost uptime now and for the future. Learn which maintenance strategies you can leverage to boost uptime and why software, data, and technology are essential to the future of maintenance. All right, in case you missed it, stories not so popular despite how hard you worked on them, but still stand to make an impact on the industry going forward. I will go first with such a dramatic lead. All right, my in case you missed it this week was a story about how John Deere, or Deere & Company specifically, has partnered with SpaceX to connect rural farmers with Starlink. So rural broadband is a national priority. According to the U.S. Department of Agriculture, the American economy is missing out because of a lack of connectivity, means that these rural farmers can't use next-gen precision agriculture tools. The USDA thinks a more connected farmland could create up to $65 billion in gross benefit for the United States. Part of the solution is government funding, like the nearly $700 million in grants and loans that the Biden administration recently opened up. Another part of it, public and private partnerships. Well, this week, Deere & Company announced a new deal with SpaceX to provide satellite communications, or SATCOM services, to farmers through the aerospace firm's Starlink network. The collaboration is the first of its kind in the industry. John Deere's SATCOM is going to connect new and existing machines through satellite internet service and ruggedized satellite terminals, enabling new tech like autonomy, real-time data sharing, remote diagnostics, enhanced self-repair solutions, and machine-to-machine communication. SATCOM will leverage SpaceX's Starlink satellite internet constellation, and to activate the system, John Deere dealers will install a Starlink terminal on compatible machines and a modem that's going to connect to John Deere's operations center. Farmers often complete tasks within extremely short windows of time, which requires incredibly precise production. And enhanced connectivity could make things a lot easier. I think it's pretty easy to see why I chose this story, mostly because you have a couple of market leaders like John Deere and SpaceX coming together in a relationship that kind of came out of nowhere for me. But it makes a lot of sense. Jeff, you often talk about how the agricultural industry is leading when it comes to some of this new technology we're going to see in autonomous vehicles going forward. I think that's this will play a big role in that advancing in terms of adoption. And when you talk about numbers like we're missing out on $65 billion in potential benefit for the United States just because we can't get them connected to the internet, I mean, I think, this is a great stopgap, but really it's just another example of why we need to push improved infrastructure to broadband. Like I remain in awe that, 3 hours north of here where my cabin is, some people can't get internet at home because it just isn't there. Mm-hmm. And that is shocking to me. So I thought this was an incredible development. Jeff, what'd you think?
No, I love this story too. And, the one thing I will say to your point about not having internet in certain areas, some folks just don't want it. So
True.
there is sort of that old school mentality. But I love this article because I think at first sight, when you see the headline, you see John Deere and SpaceX and Starlink, you're going, what? How does this make sense? But if you really understand what's going on here, the dots connect very quickly and just makes so much sense. There's so much data now being involved in the agricultural front. The farm field is a production facility. It's exactly the same thing in terms of how all the machinery needs to work together, understanding when you need to perform maintenance, understanding weather patterns so that you can put the ideal time to plow, to plant, to harvest, everything. Yeah. All of that is so vital. And the more information we can provide farmers with to do their jobs, number one, the easier it's going to be. the better the yield is going to be, the more profitable these farmers are going to be, and hopefully more people will then be drawn to farming, to do the agricultural sector. So this is a win on a number of fronts. And in addition to just agriculture, when you look at rural broadband, it's just communication on another level to so many different entities in so many different parts of the world. So this is definitely a thing that leads to the thing type of deal on so many fronts. I'm really glad you picked this story. This was a great one.
Yeah, I actually waited to see, because I had another story picked, and then I waited to see what you were going to pick.
Yeah. You picked this one first.
Okay.
So
okay. Well, the other reason I picked this was because there is no access to internet up north at our cottage. We looked into Starlink, and the waiting list is just a monster. And so it was like, oh, okay. Well, I guess that waiting list that we got on and we'll never see anyways just got like, I don't know.
Will you get Starlink or Packers tickets first?
That's a good question.
Starlink.
Probably Starlink. Okay. Yeah. Man, I'm still sitting like 80,000 deep on the Packer tickets. And like, I thought ushering in a new rookie quarterback would help like bump me to the front of the line a little bit. And then he turns out to be a winner too. I'm never going to the game. Anna, your thoughts on the new partnership between Deere and Company and SpaceX?
Yeah, I thought this was super interesting and fun to see. So when Starlink was first, discussed, and everyone was talking about how terrible it was going to pollute the sky for astronomers and stuff, and now seeing it like come to life in real applications, I'm actually getting a little bit excited about it. And the first thing that I saw really, what an industry that I saw really taking to Starlink was actually, this is weird, but like people that are full-time RVers. Because they couldn't like get internet, but they're able to do this and still travel and not worry about not having a home base.
Yeah.
And so seeing it in, obviously needing to reach very remote areas and be, you're kind of off the grid here, but like enable these farmers to really deal with downtime. I mean, that's like what this huge massive number is of how much money they could be making that they're not, is just dealing with problems in the field and like you said, not having good forecasting tools to figure out when to plant and when to harvest and what the soil content looks like and all that stuff. So yeah, this is super exciting.
Yeah.
I kind of wish I hadn't also selected a story that's about agricultural technology, but I have.
Yeah, I mean, that's good. It's good. I mean, because one thing that we didn't talk, I mean, Jeff, you talk about it being a manufacturing facility essentially, but it's also, if we are improving access to food, I mean, all the better. And Anna, the RVers, the rubber tramps, I mean, I feel like part of the reason that you adopt that lifestyle is so you can disconnect. You can't like want to get off the grid and get away from it all and just be like, but I need my internet.
Yeah, but a lot of people are like full-time RVers and working remotely. Yeah. So they're just they like the nomadic lifestyle and they're living, kind of wherever. But
yeah, that's their choice. They need to spend their workday in a library parking lot or a Walmart or something and attached to their Wi-Fi.
Okay,
that's the sacrifice they made.
If you're watching, David wants you to pay your dues. Go to the Cracker Barrel and sit in the parking lot.
No, Cracker Barrel's internet Wi-Fi is terrible. You need a quality local library.
Yeah. I think let them do their thing.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Well, Anna, what was your agricultural based, in case you missed it?
Yeah. So this is sort of, I would say, like a companion story, but I found this story that it looks like nobody really caught on with this week, but it's pretty cool, about a fuel cell powered by dirt that runs forever. Like, that's cool, right?
Yeah, headline bingo.
Yeah, not rare earth, fuel cell powered by earth or dirt runs forever. So a Northwestern University-led team of researchers developed a new fuel cell that harvests energy from microbes living in dirt. It's about the size, they say, of a standard paperback book, and it is a completely soil-powered technology that they say could fuel underground sensors used in precision agriculture and green infrastructure. So in recent years, says the article, farmers worldwide increasingly have adopted precision agriculture as a strategy to improve crop yields. But because it's so tech-driven, it requires widespread use of a big network of electronic devices. And this new technology, they say, potentially could offer an alternative that's sustainable, renewable, and it's not a battery. So like the batteries that are being used now, obviously there's a lot of risks there. Flammability, chemicals leaching into the ground, the conflict-filled supply chains that service these products, as well as the ever-growing problem of electronic waste. So in testing of this dirt cell, not only did it work in both wet and dry conditions, but its power also outlasted similar technologies by 120%. So it's actually like a better product.
Yeah.
Bill Yen, who led the work at Northwestern, makes a great point when he says, quote, "If we imagine a future with trillions of these devices, we cannot build every one of them out of lithium, heavy metals, and toxins that are dangerous to the environment. We need to find alternatives that can provide low amounts of energy to power a decentralized network of services." Totally right. Mm-hmm. So I would encourage you to read the full article if you can, because it really goes into how this concept is more than 100 years old, but possess some challenges in real world applications, and then what it took to make this work today. So to me, reading the whole thing is really fascinating. And in the end, the researchers say, this is so crazy, that all the components needed can be purchased from a local hardware store. So, this is just what like the finest brains in the world are doing right now. It's just pretty exciting.
Yeah. It's whenever you hear about like using microbials to generate power or clean water, I find it very impressive.
Yeah.
Very impressive.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Like how do you even get there? But
yeah, talk about, not just agriculture, but, helping power these rubber tramps while they're on the road.
Yeah.
Let's get a couple of these fuel cells in the dirt. Jeff, your thoughts on the dirt-powered fuel cell?
No, this one caught my eye too this week. It seems like beyond my comprehension.
I know.
It's hard to really grasp it until you get into the article, and it's incredible. There's literally no limits in terms of how these could be used. Obviously, for some of the bigger needs, you need a lot of these fuel cells. The output's a little bit different, but it's incredible that we do have somebody who's smart enough to look at the dirt and figure out there's power there.
Yeah. It's, as long as we don't find some sort of weird long-term impact that it might have on the ecosystem, like that's just the, David's advocate,
David's watched too many
making
late night sci-fi movies.
No. I've watched the other about how we need to maintain soil health in order for, to improve maybe things on this world.
But I think it's pulling potential toxic stuff like batteries out of the soil, to perform the same function.
That's all I'm saying. That's all I'm saying is just, I want to make sure. But it sounds fantastic. That's fantastic.
You are being a real wet blanket right now.
Kind of a curmudgeon, maybe.
It's just so not my role on this panel.
I know.
I apologize. I'm like the tertiary wet blanket.
I know. Normally you are not. Normally you are.
No.
You're the hopeless optimist.
No, I should have just agreed and been like, you know what?
This is so cool.
I like it too.
Great. You know what? There is another point of view, but it's not mine. No, Jeff, what is your, in case you missed it this week?
Well, I'm glad you guys are talking about things that are going to help humanity, because I have a story on what may be one of the things that ends it. Of all the two things that do not need to be combined together, this story has them both. Miller Lite offers beer mints.
What?
Why?
It's going to have a huge impact on the industry going forward, because it's going to make the world gross.
Read this article to figure out what you should not do with a promotional item. Stick to the gym hammers, as opposed to this. So Miller Lite wants to add flavor to your new year with beer mints. Therefore, you have to be 21 or older, and you're looking to enjoy Miller time without compromising on resolutions or taste.
Oh, dry January.
So for dry January, they're doing this. There's so much here that I just don't understand.
If you miss the sweet taste of Miller Lite on your lips, grab a beer mint.
Miller beer mints are here to give you a taste of Miller Lite without consuming beer.
So
can we just let that one soak in a little bit? We're gonna give you the taste of Miller Lite. Let's be real. Okay?
Mixed with a hint of spearmint.
So what happens is basically you take the mint and you chew it, and that's where you get, or you suck on, or you get that initial blast of mint. Mm-hmm. But when you bite into it, that's when you get the beer.
I want to try this so bad.
So
it's like a beer gusher.
It's like washing or like brushing your teeth and then drinking a beer because that sounds amazing.
Oh.
Right? That's what everyone wants.
Do it every morning.
Including this great tagline, which may be the worst thing ever. Okay? With beer mints, beer lovers can chew their brew without consuming a drop of beer, because that's what I look for in a beer, to not actually have to drink the beer.
So it's it's NA though, right?
Yeah.
It has the yes, correct.
Yeah.
But you still have to be 21 or older to buy it, apparently.
All right.
So I don't know who thought of this. Who wants to put beer and mints together? I'm not getting this one.
It's like a
terrible.
It's like a Cybertruck hammer.
I was going to mention this too because I just saw this news story today.
Yeah, no, it was. So we've had. It's weird where I can't remember who said it in the office, but we were talking about how these like April Fool's jokes go so viral that then they become actual products, right? Like so in Wisconsin, it was the Curder Burger, which was a cheeseburger, but instead of cheese, it was a giant cheese curd. And everyone had a good laugh 3 years ago on April Fool's Day. And then they're like, oh my God, everybody thought this was popular. So then they made it. Mm-hmm. And like, so I feel like this is part of a viral marketing campaign. They're just like, well, it's not going to taste good, but man, it's going to get everybody talking about Miller Lite.
This isn't even something that would be like, oh, let's try this. This sounds gross.
Yeah. And Anna, I think we both had the same thought at the same time, but we also saw a similar story coming from Burt's Bees today. No, this is yesterday, about a very unique chapstick Hidden Valley Ranch tie-up. Because everybody wants chapstick that is flavored either as Hidden Valley Ranch, buffalo sauce, crunchy celery, and fresh carrot.
Like, are you supposed to layer it? Or are you supposed to like carrot the bottom?
Yeah.
Ranch the top?
I think you're supposed to go buffalo sauce, ranch, then the celery and or carrot chaser.
Yeah, that makes more sense.
You would close it with that. Okay.
Yeah, I think so. But again, I mean, we covered the Doritos liquor a couple of months ago. And sometimes these are asinine, and there's always the caveat, limited supply. I wonder how many of these they wind up making. Like, I wonder how many beer mints they wind up making.
And I mean, I do get that they're doing this for dry January. People who want to taste beer without having a beer.
That's not why they're doing it.
It's just not. Why mint?
Yeah.
Like, that's the part I'm not, I guess maybe that's what I'm stuck on. Like, why do you need the mint first and then the beer?
No, but Jeff, the product itself is irrelevant. It is the outrageousness of the product that is the marketing campaign that's just like brand advertising. Like the spirit of just America. People talking about Miller Lite. Like that's all that is.
Pick a beer that actually has flavor.
Whoa, swinging!
Oh, come on. Everybody who likes Miller Lite's like, I drink it because it's a beer that doesn't taste like beer.
No, I have no business with this. I don't like the flavor of beer. So this is just
what?
I saw this. I know, newsflash. But I saw this and I'm like, oh, they just made mints gross. And I don't know. Like I feel like I'm a sucker for these, but then also I'm just like, why? Why do we need to do this? Are we just debasing the culture a little bit?
I mean, that happens every day.
Producer Alex, you are a connoisseur of beer. What is your thumbs up or thumbs down? Attaboy.
PBR mint. Where are we at then? Still a thumbs down.
Thank you.
Still a thumbs down. No, Jeff, it would be cool if we could do a follow-up with the beer maker and just say, all right, how many did you sell? Because that's the other thing is like you wanted to do the Thanksgiving pizza from like DiGiorno or whatever, and we couldn't even get our hands on it because it was so popular.
That's true. Fair enough.
Gimmicks work.
For what it's worth, I do like other Miller beers.
Yeah.
So I'm not trashing the company, just this idea.
Miller High Life.
Oh, the champagne.
Champagne of beers.
All right. Well, before we get out of here this week, and Doug says he's glad he missed that one. Yeah.
New topic for the show. Glad I missed it.
Yeah.
From Doug.
If you're unable to procure these mints, maybe just check the dumpsters outside of Miller in a couple of months. All right. Before we get out of here, we'll do a couple of final thoughts. Anna, do you have a final thought ready? What do you got this week?
My brain is essentially fried. I spoke last week about needing some ideas to help keep my kids entertained because of the massive amounts of snow that fell last week. So multiple snow days at home and then the freezing temps that followed that. Mm-hmm. We've also been playing Guess That Illness at our house for the last several weeks. So we never leave the house anymore. And I just really, with those ideas, everybody, please send them in.
Like in shut-ins of the Today in Manufacturing universe, please unite.
Yes.
And let her know what works.
Just some really age diverse games or
you should go old school
activities.
Like the old school handheld Tyco video games.
Where we had the baseball one and it would be the ball.
Yeah.
Remember that?
Yeah. You can give them that because it takes 3 hours to actually finish a game. Or the old things where you would push the buttons and it would shoot the rings in the water and you'd have to hook them on the pegs. Yeah. Remember those?
We do have some of those.
Oh,
and,
they sell those?
Yeah, you can get them online and we take them in the car. And we have the basketball one and then there's one with a couple of sticks. And it's pretty hard, but they like it.
I'm sorry. The two things I got, you're like, we got them. It's not working.
I don't have the slow 80s Tyco video games, but I don't think that they would have the attention span for that. Honestly, I think they would just be like, no thanks. We'll just be outside. Maybe that's the way.
Well, have you made
that's awesome. If they want to be outside,
give them that, and then
games.
they'll just be like, peace. We're gonna keep ourselves busy.
That's where I screwed up.
Have you made the dramatic crazed, sleepless cabin fever purchase yet where you're just no, I'm buying a full-size skee ball machine and putting it in the basement? Have you done that
yet? No, but the other day with my 8-year-old, soon-to-be 9-year-old home sick for several days in a row, she was bored. And I was like, let's plan your birthday party. And then I was just in the cart, let's do that. There's goodie bags. So we're pretty into this birthday party, pretty deep. But.
Getting deep into the birthday party planning.
Yeah.
Well, my final thought this week is, Doug says Yahtzee. I mean, it's a classic.
Yahtzee is great, actually. That's a good idea. Mm-hmm. Let me see. 6 years old is peak frustration with losing games. So I'll have to see if that flies, if Yahtzee flies, but I feel like they could learn it at least and try.
Yeah, Candyland's a winner for us with the 5-year-old. Yahtzee is I'd be interested to see how much of the card you fill out. Mm-hmm. If you could actually complete a full game or not.
Probably not.
Yeah.
But, yeah.
I should just bring, we should do a board game exchange. I'll
we
just
should
bring a box of
do
them
a trade.
and be like, here, take these for 6 months.
Yeah.
Until they're cashed out and we'll return them.
Here's bananagrams. See you next year.
For us, the hot one right now is Rattlesnake Jake and Don't Break the Ice.
Rattlesnake Jake?
Yeah. Got to get your hand out of there.
We'll talk offline.
Okay. See, these are the ideas you're looking for.
Yeah, they are.
My final thought this week is just wanted to thank producer Alex. He's running the ship by himself this week. And say hello to producer Eric, who maybe he can stream this wherever remote part of Mexico he is in right now. Hope you're having a good time, but hope you get back safely. The other thing is that producer Eric is going to be taking part in the Polar Plunge. And so if you'd like to support him, he's the Tally-Ho Plungers. If you want to help him raise money for his team for Special Olympics and the Polar Plunge, which it was one of those where he kind of sent it out and he's like, join the team. I'm like, I would love to do a polar plunge. And he's like, join the team financially. I'm just less excited. But no, so if we could all come together and maybe help producer Eric out a little bit and raise a little bit of money for Special Olympics, I think that would be great. Jeff, your final thought this week.
Oh, we actually had a board game situation too, trying to clear out the board game cabinet because
Jeff, I am your man.
Aged out a little bit.
Yeah.
Okay.
So they did take some stuff out of there. The one I was disappointed with was Apples to Apples.
Ooh, that's
because now there's more edgier versions of that. So they've aged out of Apples to Apples, but we had some good times with that one.
Yeah, my brother sent me. So my brother and his wife are hardcore into board games, right? Hardcore. And so we're celebrating her birthday this weekend, and he's been sending me some of the board games that they are buying for this event. And one of them is a Cards Against Humanity version of Disney. And he sent me just 6 of the cards, and I was horrified.
Yeah.
I'm I don't know if I can play this card with family.
Yeah.
But we'll see. I mean, I'm sure I'll have no problem.
We had one of those. It's getting to an awkward point because the girls they're 18 and older.
Yeah.
So they're ready for adult stuff, but I don't want to play those games with them yet.
Yeah.
So we had one of those at Christmas, and it's just like, we need to stop.
Too awkward.
You're just like, done. I'm out.
And it wasn't just me. They were also pretty much on board with that.
Okay. Okay. Well, very good. Sorry, was that your final thought or was that an add-on?
Both.
Oh, right on. Okay. Well, before we get out of here, please make sure to like, share, and subscribe to the podcast. You can also help us out a lot by leaving a podcast, a positive review on whatever platform you use, or, Doug, Brian, everyone that's joining us live, just give us a thumbs up before you roll. And tell your friends. You can email the podcast. You can reach any of us at Jeff, David, or Anna at IN.com with email the podcast in the subject line. You can subscribe to our daily newsletter. Make sure you get it delivered to your inbox first. And you can subscribe on YouTube at IN Magazine so you can join us live every Thursday. For Jeff Frankie and Anna Wells, I'm David Manty. This is the Today in Manufacturing podcast. We'll see you next week.